Level 1. The Seminarian. You're 18 to 20. You didn't come here for power. At least, that's what you tell yourself. You grew up in the regular world, loud, chaotic, full of contradictions. Here, everything is different. Silence, stone walls, schedules that never change. People who speak calmly and say very little. This is the Vatican, and you are a seminarian. You're taught not to speak unless asked, not to argue, not to stand out. Charisma isn't valued here. Obedience is. You wake up early. You pray. You study Latin, church history, canon law. But the most important lesson isn't written anywhere. You learn how to stay quiet, even when you know the answer. You notice things. Older men enter rooms you're not allowed in. Decisions aren't made during services, but behind closed doors. Certain names are repeated often. Others disappear without explanation. No one explains the hierarchy to you. You're expected to feel it. At first, you believe this is pure service. No ambition, no politics, just faith. But slowly, something becomes clear. The most powerful people speak the least. They don't raise their voices. They don't convince. They wait until everyone else agrees. You are no one yet. You have no authority, no voice, but you now have access, and access is currency. You're tested without questions, through situations. What do you repeat? What do you carry with you? What do you forget? At this level, only one thing is required of you. Be convenient. If you are convenient, you stay. If not, you return to the world you came from, never fully understanding what you just stepped into. Level 2. The priest. You're 25 to 30. You're no longer a student. Now you're a priest. You're given a parish. Small. Ordinary. People come to you with things they never say out loud. Confessions. Fear, guilt, secrets that can't be repeated. You quickly understand something important. Information here is more valuable than money, and you become its keeper. You're taught how to speak correctly, how to calm people down, how to avoid promises, how to never take a side openly. You don't represent yourself anymore. You represent the institution. And the institution, by definition, does not make mistakes. Individuals do. You start noticing patterns. Some priests stay in the same place for decades. Others are suddenly transferred. No scandals, no explanations, just a new address. Case closed. You begin to understand. People here aren't punished. They're moved. You see how the church interacts with the outside world, with politicians, with businesses, with governments, not through loud statements, but through meetings, wording, and silence. You're not part of these processes yet, but you're close enough to observe. This is where the first internal conflict appears. You came to serve God, but more and more, you're serving the structure. Sometimes those are the same thing, sometimes they aren't. And no one tells you where the line is. Your future now depends less on faith and more on reliability. Will you say too much? Will you act without permission? Will you become inconvenient? The system doesn't argue with problems. It removes them. You learn the core rule of this level. The higher you rise, the less it matters what you believe, and the more it matters whether you can be trusted. Level 3, the bishop. You're 40 to 45, and you're no longer responsible for souls. You're responsible for structure. You now have a diocese, dozens of priests, land, buildings, budgets, foundations. On paper, it's pastoral work. In reality, it's asset management and control. You sign documents without looking up. Transfers, appointments, rejections. One signature, and someone's career quietly ends. People stop coming to you for prayer. They come for decisions. A city mayor asks for support before an election. A businessman wants a blessing for a project. A politician wants silence. You don't promise anything directly. You just say, "The church will review it." That's enough to make people nervous. You learn a new language, the language of pauses, of half-sentences, of words that say nothing and decide everything. You watch how inconvenient people are removed, not through scandal, not through courts. They're simply transferred. Another city, another country, officially a promotion. In reality, exile. You understand something crucial. This system doesn't punish. It stops investing. That's when it becomes clear. The Vatican isn't a religious center. It's a long-living system of influence that has outlasted empires, wars, and ideologies. You still speak about God, but when you make decisions, you think about stability. And a thought starts repeating itself, one you can't confess. If you've become a bishop, it means you've already learned to place the system above the truth. Level 4, the Cardinal. You're 55 to 60. You're no longer just involved. You're admitted. The red robe isn't an honor. It's a signal that you've been allowed into places where rules aren't explained. They're expected to be understood. You enter windowless rooms where decisions are made without records. People speak quietly. No one repeats themselves. No one uses names unless necessary. Faith isn't discussed here. Consequences are. You take part in appointments that shift the balance of power across entire countries. You know which dioceses matter, which archives are sensitive, which subjects must mature before they're ever mentioned. You learn that scandal isn't the real danger. Losing control of a scandal is. You're taught the most effective technique of all. Never deny anything completely and never confirm anything fully. Doubt is the most useful tool of power. You watch how decisions made in these rooms move downward, disguised as reforms, initiatives, or moral guidance. People argue over meaning, unaware that the direction was set long ago. You no longer persuade anyone. You define the frame in which persuasion happens. Sometimes you remember who you used to be, a seminarian, a priest, a bishop, and you realize that every level trained you not in faith, but in controlling silence. The higher you rise, the less you need to speak. And the more unsettling the thought becomes. If you disappeared tomorrow, the system wouldn't even pause. Level 5. The Curia. You're over 60 now. You're no longer a face. You're a mechanism. You don't work with regions or congregations anymore. You work with flows of information, money, and influence. The decisions you touch never make headlines and are never announced from balconies. They exist as edits, footnotes, delays, and carefully chosen wording. The Curia isn't a place. It's a condition. No one rushes here because time is the Vatican's most valuable asset. You know which archives must remain closed, which names should never be spoken aloud, which investigations need to continue without ever reaching a conclusion. You understand now that truth isn't a fact. It's the management of consequences. And you're part of that management. You don't argue anymore. You adjust. You don't forbid. You postpone. You don't approve. You soften. You don't decide directly. You create conditions where the outcome becomes inevitable. Everyone around you once believed, just like you did. Everyone wanted to serve. Now you all serve the system because there is no alternative. If you leave, the system moves on without you. If you fail, it replaces you. You think about God less and less, not because you stopped believing, but because belief is no longer a tool here. That's when you feel the real trap of this level. You hold enormous power, but you can never show that you have it. And that's exactly what makes you dependent. Level 6, the Pope. You're over 70 now. You are no longer a man. You are a symbol. The world sees the white robe, the balcony, the blessing, cameras, applause, historic speeches. People believe you've reached the highest point possible, that beyond this, there is only God. You know better. The papacy isn't power, it's a display case. You don't control the system, you represent it. Every word you speak passes through layers of review. Every gesture is discussed in advance. Every silence is calculated. You don't make decisions alone. You approve what has already become inevitable. The Curia has survived dozens of popes. It will survive you too. You live in isolation disguised as honor. You're protected, filtered, and buffered from reality. People, information, even questions reach you only after being screened. The higher your position, the narrower the corridor of truth becomes. Sometimes you look at the crowd below and realize something unsettling. They believe in you more than you believe in your own authority. You can change the tone. You can suggest direction. You can slow or accelerate processes, but you cannot stop them. That is the final paradox of the highest level. You become the face of an eternal structure that exists precisely because no individual can ever own it. When you're gone, the world mourns. Carefully chosen words are spoken. An era is named after you. And the next morning, the system continues. Calmly, quietly, without hesitation. You reached the top, but the top was never yours.